On December 14, 2025, police responded to a Brentwood home. Hollywood legend Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead, and their son Nick, once immortalized in a painfully honest film about addiction and parental fear, was taken into custody. For many, this moment brought a sense of shock. The story behind the 2016 movie now feels eerily close to prophecy. Was this tragedy truly foreshadowed, or does the truth lie hidden between art and reality? On December 14, 2025, the quiet of Brentwood in Los Angeles was broken in the mid-afternoon when emergency services were dispatched to a residence on Chadbourne Avenue. Responders arrived after a medical aid call placed sometime between 3:30 and 3:40 in the afternoon. Inside the home, they found two adults later identified as Rob Reiner, age 78, and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner, age 68, both deceased. Multiple news outlets citing law enforcement sources reported both had suffered fatal stab wounds. The Los Angeles Police Department classified the case as an apparent homicide and assigned the investigation to its robbery homicide division. At the time of initial press briefings, officials said no suspect had been publicly identified and that no one had been formally detained. Later that evening, reports surfaced that a family member was being questioned in connection with the deaths. Several outlets, referencing unnamed sources, indicated that one of the Reiner's daughters discovered the bodies and contacted authorities, though police have not made an on-the-record statement confirming that detail. As the story developed, further updates pointed to the couple's son, Nick Reiner, age 32, being taken into custody and booked on suspicion of murder, with bail reportedly set at $4 million, according to records cited by major news organizations. The official list of charges and the full findings from the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner had not been released at the time of early coverage. Authorities emphasized that the investigation is ongoing and that there is no indication of a wider threat to the public. In 2015, Rob Reiner and his son Nick brought a deeply personal story to the Toronto International Film Festival. The film Being Charlie was presented as semi-autobiographical, a rare collaboration between a father and son whose real lives had been shaped by addiction and fear. Rob directed, Nick co-wrote with his friend Matt Elisafon, and together they drew from years of struggle that had left their family raw and searching for answers. The film would see limited release the following May, but even at its premiere, the echoes of their private battles were unmistakable. Being Charlie follows an 18-year-old son of a public figure cycling through rehab and running from the suffocating grip of his own addiction. Critics and festival programs noted that Nick was writing from experience. He entered his first treatment program as a teenager, and he drifted through 17 more before finding any sense of stability. The movie's honesty, its willingness to show pain, relapses, and the fragile hope of recovery set it apart from the sanitized stories Hollywood often tells. One line from a major newspaper feature in 2015 still lingers. Rob and Michelle, reflecting on their lowest moments as parents, admitted they sometimes wondered if there was an end in sight, or if it would be, as they put it, the tragic one coming. The film didn't predict the future. Instead, it captured the dread that sits with every parent watching a child slip away. For the Reiners, art became a way to speak the fear out loud and to let others know they were not alone. Nick Reiner's struggle with addiction began early. By his own account, he was first sent to rehab at around age 15. That first program was only the beginning. Over the next several years, Nick cycled through a reported 17 different treatment centers, scattered across multiple states. He spoke in interviews about periods of homelessness, sometimes sleeping in cars or on friends' couches, drifting far from the safety of home. These were not isolated incidents or brief lapses. His journey through addiction was marked by repeated relapses, interventions, and the kind of family turmoil that rarely makes headlines. Rob and Michelle Reiner, in interviews during those years, described the agony of watching their son disappear into his illness. They trusted the advice of professionals, following recommendations for tough love and boundaries, even when it meant turning Nick away from home. Later, both parents admitted to second-guessing those choices. Rob spoke about the pressure to do everything right, to listen to experts, and the fear that every decision might make things worse. Michelle echoed that regret, saying there were times she wished they had listened more closely to Nick himself, rather than only to the people who promised a solution. For the Reiner family, the numbers were not just statistics. 17 rehabs meant 17 rounds of hope and heartbreak. Homelessness was not a headline, it was a daily reality. Their story played out in private, but it reflected a crisis that touches families everywhere. The pain, the cycles, and the regrets would later find their way into art, but for years they were simply the facts of their lives. The news sent shock through the film community and beyond. Messages of grief and disbelief poured in from friends, colleagues, and admirers. Longtime collaborator Billy Crystal, who shared decades of work and friendship with Rob Reiner, was reported among those who arrived at the Brentwood home that evening. Larry David, another close friend, issued a brief statement recalling Reiner's humor and loyalty. Directors, actors, and writers who had worked with Rob or Michelle described the couple as generous, fiercely supportive, and deeply committed to their family. In the first hours after the announcement, the public response was raw and immediate. Social media filled with tributes, memories, and condolences, many referencing the family's openness about struggle and the impact of Rob Reiner's films on multiple generations. Neighbors spoke quietly to reporters about the sudden loss, describing the Reiners as private but always gracious, their home a gathering place for friends and family. As the investigation continued, legal counsel for the family issued a statement reminding the press and public that while the case was being treated as an apparent homicide, no formal charges had been filed and the details remained under review by authorities. Journalists covering the story emphasized what was confirmed, including the time of the emergency call and the identification of the victims, and noted that law enforcement had not released a motive or a final set of charges. Officials and those closest to the Reiners cautioned against speculation about the family's history or the meaning of past events. The word prophecy surfaced quickly, as headlines and commentators drew parallels to the film Being Charlie. For those who knew the family, however, this was not a story about prediction or fate. It was a moment of loss, confusion, and unanswered questions, a tragedy that echoed the fears so many families carry, but that no one could truly have foreseen. Rob Reiner's name first became a fixture in American homes as Michael Meathead Stivic on All in the Family, a role that earned him 2 Emmy Awards and set the tone for a career that would stretch across decades and genres. This early success helped shape a creative career that would move between television and feature films. As a director, he crafted stories that became cultural touchstones. The coming-of-age journey in Stand By Me, the timeless adventure of The Princess Bride, the sharp wit of When Harry Met Sally, and the courtroom tension of A Few Good Men. Each film offered a different lens on friendship, love, courage, and imagination, and together they built a legacy that shaped how millions see themselves and each other. His influence did not end with the credits. Rob Reiner's work is woven into the fabric of American pop culture, referenced and rewatched across generations. He was the son of Carl Reiner, carrying forward a tradition of storytelling that bridged eras. For many, his films were more than entertainment. They were milestones shared between parents and children, friends and couples, year after year. Yet even as his movies celebrated connection and hope, the world outside the screen was changing. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that drug overdose deaths in the United States peaked in 2021 and have only recently started to decline, though tens of thousands of families still face the daily reality of addiction and loss. That decline is real, and the human cost remains acute. In that context, Being Charlie stands as a different kind of artifact. It is not just a film, but a record of fear, struggle, and the hope that honesty might help others find a way through. The film documents a family's vulnerability, and now audiences sometimes watch those scenes with new eyes because the pain was already there. Today, viewers revisit Rob Reiner's work aware that art sometimes captures truths that statistics alone cannot explain. His stories continue to echo through lives marked by both joy and pain, and his influence on storytelling remains a lasting echo. Addiction still claims over 100,000 American lives a year, and every family's struggle echoes far beyond the headlines. Today, the line between art and tragedy feels razor thin. If we ignore the warning signs, stories like these keep repeating. For countless families, the ending is still unwritten. Share your thoughts below.